All right, everybody, if you are hearing this, you have once again tuned in the Consequence of Habit podcast. This podcast, like all the other ones, is brought to you by our friends at Athletic Brewing Company. These guys are by far making the best non-alcoholic beer on the market. I'm not saying that because they pay me. Well, because they don't, but I'm saying it because I believe in what they're doing and I love the product. So I don't care what kind of beer you like. Right now I'm having a coffee porter. Yeah, coffee porter. They've got IPAs, they've got golden ales, they've got stouts, whatever you like. This is all they make is non-alcoholic beer. So whether you're like me and alcohol does not fit into your life anymore, or for whatever reason you're not having alcohol today, whatever that reason may be, doesn't matter. So if you want to try them out, please check them out at athleticbrewing.com. Use the promo code capital COH20 and get 20% off your first order. All right, this week on the podcast, we welcome Mr. JB Hager. JB is the co-host of the Move podcast, and anyone who enjoys cycling knows that the Move podcast is, well, it's the biggest podcast out there right now. It's him and Lance Armstrong and George Hincapie and Johan Bernil. Again, huge names in the world of cycling. And, you know, I was expecting this thing to be more about that, about just co-hosting this with some of the legends of the sport. And I was wrong. I mean, don't get me wrong. There is some of that, but it was a lot more than just that. So JB comes from a long history of radio, 21 years as the Austin morning radio guy. And then at some point he steps away from it and kind of gets the carpet pulled out from under him. He's got to figure out what he's going to do. And things were not going well. He had a bunch of things going on in his life, to include some health issues with his daughter. Some financial issues, it sounds like. So we talk about that. We talk about identity. We talk about what it's like to kind of come back from being down. And this podcast was, well, not this podcast, but the Move podcast was a big part of that. And man, it was a fun conversation. You can tell that JB has spent a lot of time on the microphone talking to people because he is a true pro at it. But with that said, please welcome to the podcast, Mr. JB Hager. All right, everybody. Today we are welcomed by Mr. JB Hager, and JB is a man I think is willing to take a risk because he didn't know me from Adam, and I just reached out to him on a social media platform and said, "Would you come on my podcast?" And I don't know if you know this, everybody, but there are some real wackadoos out there. So the fact that JB, that you're actually sitting down here having this conversation with me, well, I appreciate it very much.
You know, it's nice to meet you because I just I'm en route to Aspen and visiting a buddy of mine. We ride bikes together too, but in Littleton, just outside Denver, and making my way to Aspen for the Tour de France to kick off. This will be our fifth year, but the road trip afforded me some time to check out Consequence of Habit, which I really enjoyed. And now I'm thinking, for your listeners out there who obviously know you're a cycling fan.
Yeah.
Enthusiast. And I'm like, so he has Greg LeMond, Sean Kelly, and JB Hager to talk cycling. I'm like, okay, one of these things does not go together. Two of the greatest legends ever. And then a former disc jockey. What the heck?
Yeah, but that's, you know what? You love the sport. And I've actually struggled with this also. So full transparency, I just had I had Tyler Hamilton on, and this is earlier today, and he's like, "So you race bikes?" And I said, "No, I don't. I mean, I used to ride bikes a lot. I mean, I enjoy bike riding, but I just have I just have a huge respect for the sport and the amount of suffering that goes into it. And I think what I liked about what you guys are doing is you're kind of pulling the curtains back onto a lot more than just the race itself, but more what goes on behind the scenes of it, and in the hotel, and you're just getting insight that I think for a lot of reasons was lost. It was almost like this big gap where people were only talking about certain things in cycling. We were missing these conversations, the ones I think you guys are having now. So, JB, don't downplay it. You got a whole lot of knowledge, and you've been around some of the biggest names. So I'm sure.
Well, if you listen to the move, I mean, very rarely does my bike experience come up and amateur race experience, because I've got the best experts in the world. So my job, my role is to, and this is where the radio background helps. My role is to tee up what I think the listeners are asking in their head, and sometimes it's questions that I already know the answer to,
sure,
but I act like I don't, because I think, the listeners want to know this.
Yeah. And that's a thing about asking questions is, and I've made the mistake of doing too much research. And before I go any further, I just want to make sure, because I think we're almost doing it now, that the listeners know that the Move podcast, if you haven't heard, which I'm sure you have, it's got JB. You've got, and it would really just start off as you and Lance Armstrong, correct?
Yeah, in an Airstream trailer.
An Airstream trailer. I was half expecting to see the Airstream when we got on here today.
I almost brought it out to Colorado, but I decided not to.
So, this thing about, talking to somebody and then realizing the answer, but getting it out of them, because what I was saying is I've done too much research, and then I realized after the interview that I skipped asking things because I knew it, and not having that experience to be like, well, I better drag this out because no one else has done the background like I have. So,
well, I already get enough people going, well, who is that guy?
Talking about you.
Yeah. And then there, most of the people, it's funny if I ever get ridiculed for like, why is that guy on the show? And it doesn't happen very often. And I have really thick skin, which I took into account to do this show with Lance. And I told him that. I go, dude, there's nothing anyone can say or post that'll bother me. I don't care. I've been in media my whole life.
Yeah.
But yeah, I'm just that other dude. But the listeners come to my defense. You don't even have to say anything or comment. I laugh when I hear some of the comments.
And people are the worst, aren't they? I mean, so there's a lot of great people, but there is a portion of them that are just the worst. You've probably been asked this. Anyone who's looked at your background sees the amount of time that you're in radio. How long were you? 21 years you were doing the morning show in Austin?
In Austin. Yeah. I have about 30 years radio experience.
That's a lot.
Yeah. It was great. It was a lot of fun while it lasted. And that's just, that's a medium that just got turned on its heels. People still listen. It's very relevant. It's just that the revenue got, divided by a million different ways that businesses could spend their money to promote. And so, veteran radio talent, had to go unless you had paved the way for the syndication game, which I had not. I cut my teeth in Dallas working with a guy named Kid Craddock, who is a legend. He unfortunately has passed away, but learned a lot from him about radio and people and entrepreneurship, which we didn't even use that word in the early 90s. It was just creating stuff. And then I had the opportunity after years with him. People wanted a piece of that show, and I got the call to go do a show in Austin, which was my hometown. And so it was a small place then. Now it was like, I think 96, it was like 400,000 people. So still considered a medium market, I guess. And now it would be considered a large market. It's, we're creeping up on a couple million people there, which is insane.
That place is hopping. I mean, when I talk to people in all kinds of different careers, and if it's an up and coming company, especially within the kind of like health and wellness or sports or something, that if they're not in Austin, they're planning it soon. It seems to be the place to be. So,
yeah, it's the explosion we're experiencing is unreal. You can't turn it off now. It's insane. It's in the past 6 months, homes sell for 100 to 200K over asking price.
Good
Easy,
Lord.
easy.
That's insane.
And I know. And I've got a little tiny 1960 home close to downtown. I'm like, half a mile from the river, and it's doubled in the last year. It's just nuts.
Yeah. It's got to be.
But we're just hanging on. My wife and I, we're just hanging on.
But it's got to be annoying, right? I mean, it's got to be. You got to be thinking. I mean, you remember back in '98 when we didn't have to deal, because the traffic, everything's just got to be really kind of a nightmare. There's got to be a lot of growing pains for that population to go in that quick.
Yeah, it is. It's, I try not to be, well, when I was on the radio, I just kept saying, let's go, let's grow.
Yeah.
I'm going to get to a major market the hard way by,
Right.
letting the city grow around me. There's times I'm incredibly irritated by it. But then I just have to stop and go, this could be a huge recession and the town could be depressed and nothing. I mean, you remember when everyone vacated Detroit,
Sure.
they're coming back now, but if that's the alternative, I'll take it.
Yeah.
And, and I like to ride around town on two wheels so I can get there faster that way anyway.
Yeah. Yeah. So this leads to actually a couple different things. One, you leave the radio. Is that 2017 is when you punched out?
The
morning show.
Last contract, when I was working for the big companies, was ended in the end of 2013. And then I tried to do something with some local guys for a couple years. So that took me through 2015, and it just wasn't working.
Sure.
And it was terrifying. I mean, I thought I would have another decade of a good radio contract and retire and, retire from radio.
Yeah.
I would do other stuff, but the rug got pulled out from under me a decade early, and I was like, oh crap.
That's scary.
And it was terrifying. And I was pretty bitter and upset about it for a while. And then I challenged myself at that moment to think of an industry that has not been disrupted. I couldn't think of one. I mean, no matter what industry I thought of, you can think of some kind of disruption that affects people's pay and jobs. And I'm like, okay, JB, time to reinvent. What are you going to do? And I spent a couple of years at a women's organization. I've always had this female audience on the radio, and I wrote for Austin Woman magazine, a monthly column, like the dude writing for it. But I was, raised quite a bit by a single mom for a majority of that time and three sisters. So I've always been able to talk to the female audience. But anyway, I went to this women's organization as a creative director, content creator, hosting their podcast, and it was a startup, and it was a disaster. And I did a lot of diverted pay, and it blew up. So I wasted. I mean, I shouldn't say I waste. I was learning to do all kinds of new stuff on the job, like, video and production and all these things. But it was just like, the financial downfall was terrifying. Absolutely terrifying.
Some great articles though. I read your, I forget the exact title, but it was something about like needing humor to raise a teenage daughter.
Mm-hmm.
It was great. I enjoyed it.
Oh, thank you. Thank you. Yeah. They were all online at some point, every one of those for Austin Woman, and then they changed their platform, and there's a few of them out there. I mean, I've got all the old hard copies. Maybe my daughter will want to flip through them someday.
Yeah.
Who knows?
But so you make a pivot. Was the world of podcasting on your radar? Did you see this thing as like this emerging thing that maybe I'm going to tap into, or were you so wrapped up at this point within the traditional radio side that this just really wasn't on your radar?
At that time, at the women's organization, I wasn't taking it that seriously because I didn't see, leaving radio. Everyone's like, you should launch a podcast. It's not that simple to bring a radio audience over to a podcast. It just doesn't work that way. And I didn't want to do it without a big media partner. So I fished around for some of those, and it wasn't coming together until Lance called, which is kind of a funny story if you'd like to hear that.
Sure. Because that was a big question. Like, how does that
that transition? Yeah. I literally, I had just decided like to pull the plug, leave that women's organization. They owed a lot of money. I was like, I had nothing going on.
Really?
But I wasn't getting paid. So I just was like, it's time to cut the cord. I have to cut the cord to move on.
Yeah.
Instead of hanging on to funding coming in and things like that. And within that week, Lance called me out of the blue, and I was like, I'd pick up the phone. I'm like, hello. And he goes, well, what are you doing? And I go, nothing. And he goes, no, really, what are you doing now? I go, Lance, literally nothing.
Wait, are you guys are, how close are you? Because what is the relationship leading up to this?
Yeah. And then I'll come back to that.
Okay.
So yeah. And it's important because, so I started my radio show in Austin in 96, the same time Lance was sick. And I was never a cyclist. I didn't even own a bike until 97, okay. I think. My first bike in my life, really. But I was always a big fan of cycling. I just couldn't afford it.
Yeah, right.
I grew up a runner and a swimmer, and would have probably gone down the triathlon route could I afford a bike. So I was a fan. I knew what you could know. You didn't know much. I'm 53, so we were the generation that we got to see Le Mans on ABC Sports for an hour.
Yeah.
An hour recapping an entire week. And then, you could go to the local bike shop and rent the videotapes of Tour de France recap, Phil Liggett's company that was producing those.
John Tesh. John Tesh is the commentator.
Yeah. John Tesh. And, you could rent a video months after the race.
Sure.
Of Paris-Roubaix or Flanders or whatever. So anyhow, I was this casual fan, and I had just started the show, and I was reading in the newspaper about the Lance Armstrong Foundation starting. And I just reached out. And if you read Lance's books, you hear he references his close friend College, John Coriath, who started he was the president of the foundation, I guess, if you want to call it that. I reached out and I was like, hey, I've got this new radio show in town. How can I help? It was just the announcement of the beginning of the foundation. And Lance wasn't even going to race at this point, race again. And I had just started riding a bike. I had this, oh my gosh, it was like a $500 used Raleigh bike. Right. And John, who's still to this day one of my dearest friends, says, do you ride bikes? I'm like, yeah. I think the longest ride I had done was 25 miles, and sure, I ride. He goes, okay, cool. Let's meet at the foundation and go for a ride and talk. I'm like, okay. I show up at the LAF office, which was this little house near downtown. And John comes out, looks at me, and he goes, hang on a sec. And he goes back into the LAF office and comes out with a bunch of gear, some nice cycling shades, a Giro helmet, one of Lance's old Cofidis jerseys. And he goes, put this on.
That's hilarious.
I must have looked like a jackass, right? And so we started, I'm kind of jumping around here, but we started doing stuff on the radio to support LAF, their concerts, their first Ride for the Roses, everything before it became Livestrong. And then after my first year in Austin, I started a charity called Bikes for Kids. And our listeners would nominate families in need that aren't on charitable lists. It might be a lot of teachers nominating a kid in their class, or a neighbor who's going through a hard time, or a housekeeper who's struggling, just great stories. And then we were out on the streets raising money. So I'm supporting LAF. Lance would come out and sign autographs at all of our fundraising events. So, and I still to this day tease him about it, because the first year he showed up, we were raising money at like a futon company. So, that was a sponsor. And he's like, yeah, I'll come sign autographs. Like 8 people showed up, and half of them were cycling friends. I heard you on the radio. And then of course, then you move on and the victories happen, and it grew to thousands of people lining up to get an autograph and donating to our charity. And then he would do a December training camp with Postal, and he would have the whole team show up to sign autographs.
Awesome.
Which is incredible, right? You're talking about 15 guys or so who would do a training camp in Austin. And, fast forward quite a bit on my cycling, and then I'll come back to the podcast. John, also known as College, really took me under his wing with cycling. We started riding all the time, and he's like, give me a route. That's what you needed back then. Where do I go?
Right.
And he'd show me a 2.5 hour route. And then I'd see him like a month later, and he goes, you've been riding? I go, yeah, I did that 2.5 hour route every day since I saw you last.
Wow. And
then he showed me more. And then I got to a point where I started showing up on some group rides and learning that etiquette. And, and luckily, and thank God, I had someone there to again, take me under their wing, because it's intimidating.
Oh yeah, it really is, right? To get into a pack of people. You never thought you could be so intimidated by a bunch of skinny guys in spandex.
Yeah, but they're what are the language rules on this show? Because
no, you feel free. Like,
okay,
yeah.
Because the hardcore cyclists, they can be real dicks. Let's be honest,
super dicks.
And part of it is justified in the fact that you're rolling along inches from each other at 30 miles an hour. You can get killed, and so you do get screamed at and yelled at. And then and then as I got better and better and better at it, and I lost a whole bunch of weight, and then John was like, "Okay, now you know how to ride. Now you need to learn how to ride fast." And so we had this informal Tuesday nighter. It was a 9-mile circuit with rolling hills, and everyone from Cat 5 to pros would show up.
Oh wow!
You never knew if Armstrong was going to show up, or Kevin Livingston. Ekimov showed up one year when he was in town. Chan McRae was living in Austin. There was a lot of pros in Austin. And so you go out there and you just get dropped, and you get dropped, and you get dropped, and you show up again, and you get dropped, and you get dropped, until you finally stay in. And then I started racing. And John had this great team. And so anyway, I don't want to go down too much down that path, but I eventually got to a point where I was racing as a Cat 3 Masters, would ride with Lance. This is what your question really was. When Lance was in town in the winter, I could go on a training ride and hang.
Which is a big deal. So which is a big deal. Yeah, it's a big deal to say that.
And then to get invited to go on and ride with Postal when they were in town.
Oh,
can you imagine that?
No, I can't. That's gotta be something else.
So I did that a few times, and so Lance and I were always helping each other's charities, and I would interview him every year and do the fundraising and do all kinds of stuff with LAF, which eventually became Livestrong. So we were, and then our wives, friends, and just. So back to where we were, Lance calls me out of the blue, and I'm not doing anything. I mean, I'm just really kind of panicking, and he goes, what are you doing? Nothing, dude. Literally nothing. And he goes, well, do you want to do a Tour de France recap podcast? This is 3 weeks before the tour starts. 3 weeks in 2017. And I'm like, for some reason, I started hemming and hawing. And I was like, man, Lance, I haven't bike raced in 5 years. And I haven't even watched a pro bike race in 5 years. And he goes, neither have I.
That's right, because he hadn't, right? He was done with the sport.
He didn't want to ride for a while. He was running and doing other stuff, but he didn't want to. And after he said that, he goes, neither have I. And I go, I just said, I'm in. I'll do it. I'll do it. And then he goes, there's one other little detail I got to tell you. We got to do it from Colorado. This is 3 weeks out. And I'm like, okay, all right, let's make it happen. And he was even saying, he goes, I don't know if this is going to work, if people are going to like it. I have no idea. I don't know what to expect.
Because he's at this point, he's dipping his toes back in the water to even see what the reception is going to be, right? I mean, this is...
Yeah, and he hadn't much. He had been doing the Forward podcast for about a year and a half. That's right. Yep. At that point. That was dipping his toes back in. And he had started a couple of rides, you know, the Aspen 50 and the We Do 100 in Austin. And but very lightly dipping his toes. So we didn't know what the public opinion was going to be like. But I've always been friends with the guy, and I always had this policy in my own head that and this has, whether it's Lance or anybody, I try not to let other people's opinions of them influence my relationship with them.
Yeah. Yep.
Even if I haven't met them yet, I'm just like, I'd like to just, you know, size people up on our own relationship. And then of course people associated the two of us together a lot because of the radio show. And so I got asked a million times about it. And I said, you know, he's never been anything but nice to me, nothing but generous with his time.
Well, when I'm sorry to cut you off. When you say that you were asked about it, you were asked about what his character, if he was an asshole, all of these things.
Yeah. All the time. And I'm like, he's never been anything but great to me. And I consider him a great friend. You know, he does a million things behind the scenes that you don't see.
Yeah.
I can't tell you how many times I'm with him and he's calling somebody who's on their deathbed, you know, all the time. And, you know, just, we had a great relationship. So to make matters a little more complicated, he goes, oh yeah. Okay. So you're going to come, we're having this conversation. All happens in about 5 minutes. And then he goes, all right, here's another thing. I need your help with. I don't have anywhere to record it in Aspen. I'm like, oh my God, what is going on here? I go, there's nowhere in your house to do it. He goes, you don't understand. It's chaos here. You know, he's got 5 kids.
Yeah, that's a lot. Right.
And, you know, the older 3 are off in college now, but at that time they were still around. And his house is chaos. Now it's a little more chilled now because, again, the character thing, just in that time I was there for that 3 weeks in July, in the 17 Tour de France, he hosted 2 or 3 events for charities there where they're putting up, you know, huge tents outside because you get those afternoon rains in Colorado, and there are caterers everywhere. And I mean, it really is chaos. So I was like, oh, I get it. And later I thought that, but I was like, and I go, well, I got this Airstream that's pretty good for production. I can bring it up there if we can find a place to put it. And there are no RV parks anywhere around Aspen. No surprise there.
Right.
But I'm calling around. I call an Aspen radio station. Can I put it in your parking lot? I couldn't find anywhere to put this thing. And his neighbor, Pam, who's a hardcore cyclist, she's the real deal. She goes, oh, yeah, put it in my driveway. So I'm putting it in this driveway, but I can't imagine her house has got to be $25 million. And I've got my little trailer in her driveway, which is across the street. It was Lance would walk out in shorts barefoot to come over and do the show. And we're like, well, let's make it work. So I went from doing nothing to hitching up my Airstream and heading to Aspen and going, let's do this. And, right out of the gate, yeah, and it was like you mentioned, it was just Lance and I. George wasn't a part of that at that moment. And the reception was insane. It was just ridiculous. Every day, by doing a Google search, just the different countries that we were getting press in was out of control. Like we were hitting everywhere in the world. And they would always take their jab. They would always say the disgraced Lance Armstrong and take their jabs at him. But the recurring comment was that it was a guilty pleasure. Like, I feel bad for listening because these are journalists who he didn't always get along with. Now I work with a bunch of journalists at the Statesman, which is funny. But anyway, they all kept saying, this show's actually really good. I enjoy it. They were apologetic for writing about it and saying that it's good, but then it just, the articles and the coverage and the press, the downloads, we were just like, we finished the first 3 weeks, with 10 million downloads, and we were like, what just happened? 10
million downloads. Now, I don't know. Well, most people probably don't even realize this, but if your podcast has 150 downloads, I think it's something like the number, like in the first 24 hours, you're in like the top 50% of all podcasts.
Right.
I mean, podcasts these days, people are sick of hearing it. I said, starting a podcast is like deciding you're going to sell masks during COVID. Like everyone was doing it, right?
Right.
And I don't know what the downloads were from the last one, but as soon as I started listening to it, and this isn't just to blow smoke, I think it's the dynamic of, you've got Lance Armstrong, and he's still the, what's the right word? You kind of,
the lightning rod.
Yes, that's the lightning rod. And then the dynamic with you, and you come in and you're a little more even keeled, and it just kind of brings it down a little bit. And I think the two together play off really well. And then it, like I said, and I think this is what I said before we hit record. It's the fact that you're talking about parts of cycling that no one else. He's got insight to things that no one else is going to be talking about. At least, you're not hearing it very much. It's the behind the scenes stuff. It's the deal making. Man, I was fascinated when he was, talking about the little deals that are going on between teams and the rules of in and out of the peloton, like the unspoken, it's that stuff.
The politics of racing. It's fascinating.
That's the stuff that you don't know about. And
you'd always heard rumors that there were deals made and teams helping teams, and help us here, we'll help you at a classic, right? It's real, right? and he lifts the lid on all those dirty little secrets, if you want to call it that. But it's part of the sport too. Yeah. It is, he says that it's politics too.
And people are jumping, they want to hear. He has the We Do podcast, right? But he's talking to other people. He's interviewing other people.
On the forward.
I'm sorry, I apologize.
The
forward. And he's it could be, a NASCAR driver, a professional athlete, or a rock star, or something like that. But it's not his wheelhouse. It's him talking to other people about what they're doing. Now, when
he specifically did not talk cycling on that show.
Right. And now he's back in the world of cycling. And that's one of the things people's ears perk up when they hear, well, he's got a cycling podcast. Like, oh man, I need to check this out.
Another funny part of that story too, with launching it was, I had stopped racing because my daughter is in water sports. She's a professional wake surfer.
Wow.
And a two-time world champion. And so I was driving a boat every day. I quit riding and I was driving a boat. And then, you might have a couple of pops out on a boat.
Sure.
That's why I was so pissed when Lance called me. I go, dude, I'm 230 pounds. and I go, this is not a good look. This is not good. And he goes, we're not going to be on camera. It's a podcast. And I go, dude, I'm a media guy. We've got to be on camera.
Gotta be.
And so year 2, we took it to another level, and now it's at it's at the level of production where 3 cameras, live switching, quick turnaround. The way Rogan and all of them do it, the bigger podcasts. But luckily, I'm a little thinner now. It took about 35 pounds off, but 40-ish. But Yeah, that was brutal. I look back at some of those videos and pictures from 17, and I'm just squeezing into the dinette and the Airstream. And it's just
to make it worse, you're in an Airstream, right? So even somebody thin looks cramped in that thing. So
yeah, and you're next to one of the fittest guys on the planet, and then all of his friends. Everyone out there is fit and beautiful. I'm just like, people must see me walking down the street in Aspen and going, "Who is that?"
The cops are stopping you.
Why is he in Aspen?
But that had you. So you're how many kids do you have?
I have just the one daughter. She's 19 now.
So we're going back at a pretty pivotal time, even in her age. How was selling that to the wife? Like, hey, in 3 weeks, I'm leaving for a month. Because we're going to do a podcast, and I have no idea if this is going to be generating revenue. We took no ads year 1, 0. Yeah. And I mean, that had to go over like a fart in church at some point.
It was tough. And I'll share a little bit, and we probably don't have time to go down this rabbit hole, but, my daughter she's a freak talent. She's an absolute freak talent. And she won the women's pro world title at age 10 and 11.
Unbelievable.
And so by age 13, which is around this time, let me think. No, that's a few years later. She was falling apart mentally. So at the end of middle school, and definitely by freshman year, she completely, and she's been vocal about this, and she did a 4-part interview telling her story on a podcast, sports podcast. And she completely fell apart. She was diagnosed as bipolar. She was going off the rails. Yeah. She was angry with parents, teachers, any kind of authority. She was a mess. She was still wake surfing and trying to keep it together. But anyone on the outside looking in could see that she was falling apart. I mean, it was tragic.
That had to be absolutely grueling for you and your wife to see.
Oh, it was it was. We still like, let me put people at ease to know that she's doing great now. And that's right. I'll give you the short version of that story, but my wife and I still are adjusting to it, because it was about 7 years of a kid, a mess, depressed, off the rails, experimenting with partying to find some relief, acceptance. Mm-hmm. And then there's a lot of problems with our mental health system. It cost a fortune for one. So we went in the hole really fast, and heavy in the hole. But, you have a kid who was this, 13-year-old who was just depressed. And then they're self-harming and acting suicidal. So you hospitalize them, and then they come out of the hospital like they've been in prison for 20 years. The language, and that becomes their new social network, are older teens who are using and abusing, and a mess. That became her peer group.
This is so scary to even
it was terrifying. And so, I needed to do something, and my wife's Erin is just freaking amazing. She held it together, and she couldn't work because you have a kid on watch pretty much 24/7 for many, many years. And so it was, being in media for so long, you learn to turn it off for the time you're doing a show, and then you jump on the phone.
Right.
How we doing? How we doing back home? And it was that way the next few years too. Last year was the first year where I didn't have to worry about that back home.
Yeah. I've always said if somebody was coming towards, or something was coming towards your kid, I can react to that, right? I can personally react to that. But when it's something that it's coming from inside, whether it be a disease or and really, I mean, that's if we're going to talk mental illness, that's what it is, and I think one of the biggest things is to keep really pushing that home. But you can't stop that. And that is I imagine it's a very helpless feeling. And very difficult, obviously on the person going through it, but just as much for the loved ones that, you know, your whole purpose on life is taking care of them. So, yeah.
Yeah. Then, so just to fill in a hole for people, you know, I don't bring that up for people to have pity for me. No. It's actually quite an amazing story because, you know, it was so bad, you know, we were almost like, when and how are we going to lose her? You know, it almost seemed like it was inevitable. And then a couple of years ago, you know, she finished high school, which we had to have a tutor come to our house every day. She couldn't exist in high school. It wouldn't work. And she just had this moment, you know, she had been on every kind of medication and the side effects are horrific. And in hindsight, the side effects create the symptoms that support the diagnosis.
Sure.
So you, as a parent, you believe in it. Okay. She really is this, that. She's depressed. She's bipolar, whatever. And my daughter, Raleigh, who's an amazing young woman, is just all of a sudden she was like, had this moment and she said, fuck all this. Fuck the doctors. Fuck my parents. Fuck the medications. I'm done. And, you know, of course you're scared, right? You know, so, and it's something you can't just go cold turkey on. And she said, you know, she was asked, my wife, her mom, she said, do we still have that food allergy, food sensitivity test that I did a few years back? And Erin's like, yeah, of course my wife has it. She's very organized. She's like, yes, it's right here. And we didn't go down that path because it's insane. It's dairy-free, gluten-free, no corn, wheat, or flour. No soy substitutes, which is always the dairy substitute, right? And she chooses not to eat red meat or chicken. She will eat fish. And so it was just this crazy thing. And she goes, I'm doing this. And I kid you not, 3 months later, living to the letter on this diet, and she shared it all publicly, a different human being. Completely different, like this loving, wonderful person. And I wouldn't even say we got our daughter back because she was 12 when she went away. Yeah. You know, now she's turning 18 and she'll turn 20 this fall, but just this whole new human being. And she's doing great. She's just, and she, you know, she works on that diet all the time. It's very hard. We started doing most of it too, you know, and then COVID hits.
Yeah. Right.
And we're ordering all this local farm delivery and just getting creative with veggies and
well, that whole science. And I'm always apprehensive about getting into, I don't know, any science because I'm not qualified, but you hear a lot more talk about this connection between the gut and the brain and how it's, you know, it's one part of the brain and what it can do. So I can't say that I'm completely shocked that you know, it at least plays a big part in where we are, even, you know, between the years by what you're putting in your body. But
yeah. And now she wake surf coaching, loving it, busy as hell, really busy, getting to rock climbing and going to the gym. And, you know, with COVID, we all were like, you know, we need to change our diets. We're learning from it. And, you know, when you talk consequence of habit, it's like, this is going to sound terrible. And I apologize if anyone lost a loved one during COVID, right? But COVID was like one of the best things that could have happened to our family.
I always feel
like we all shifted and started eating we started eating differently to be more like her. And we're all feeling better and just, you know, so my message to people on the mental health thing is look into that. And if you can give it 3 to 6 months, whew, it's amazing. It's a miracle. It really is.
What a cool thing to say. We were trying to be like her, where you spent years of her trying to be more like you as far as, you know, mentally and being in a happier place. And now she's in this place and you guys are trying to be more like her.
You should, again, about habits changing. It's going to the grocery store with her now that, you know, we're back in grocery stores more so, is a 2-hour event. She reads these labels and, things that we see marketed to us. And I go, well, what about this? Looks good. And I'll put it in the cart. And she's like, Dad, you can't eat that. It's got blank and blank and blank. It's garbage. But it's marketed as a healthy, product.
They put it in those. I'm sorry. They put it in that like tan container. It's got these earthy tones to it. There's a farm in the background, and you're like, oh, this came clear from the farm. It's really changed our habit, and you're just learning to eat real food. It's been great. This podcast, we've spent a lot of time. I talk about all kinds of things. The thing about habits is it's got two sides, right? It's a double-edged sword. You've got these habits that can make you the best professional athlete or an amazing entrepreneur, but there's also habits that can bring you down to rock bottom. And we talk a lot about mental health also, because there's habits that can maybe help your mental health. And one of the most powerful conversations I've had on here was with a retired 2-star general. It was Major General Greg Martin, and he was bipolar. He didn't even realize he was bipolar. He was just thought of as an eccentric leader, and he would do things. He says, I look back now and I'm like, I'd wake up. He's a colonel at the time. He's waking up young lieutenants at midnight for a 10-mile run. And everyone thought it was kind of quirky, but kind of cool at the same time. But his highs continued to get higher and his lowers got lower. And then it finally got to a point where he was the president of the National Defense University, which is the highest military educational institute there is. And he gets called in to his boss's office. He says, I love you, but you got till the end of today to step down or you're fired. And wow. Yeah. But it's what's great about it, the conversations that we have around mental illness and, if he had diabetes, they wouldn't have removed him. I know. Oh God. JT, my wife and I talk about this all the time. If one of our peers has a child that has heart problems or lung problems or muscular problems, some sort of disorder or something like that, the outpouring of empathy and love and support is unreal. Yeah. Now, when your kid has mental health problems, they all look at you like it must be the parents. Yeah. But that kid's an asshole. And they scatter like cockroaches when you flick on the light, So, you take the radio career ending where I knew everyone in town, or everyone in town knew me, and then this daughter falling apart. Oh, man. We were on an island for a long time. So again, still now we go, is everything okay? Everything seems okay. Right. This feels really good. Right. And we got to, again, back to habits. We got to 2 years ago when Raleigh started doing well, we were like, we can go back to doing stuff for ourselves, as they call it in the field, self-care. Yeah. She gets back in the gym like she loves, and then I got back on the bike, and it's been amazing. I forgot how much I enjoyed it. Just one last question on this, and then we'll move on to more of the podcast stuff. But I obviously knew nothing about this part of your story, but what do you think the difference is? Do you think just the way that mental illness presents itself to others, and just in like an interpersonal communication wise, or do you think that's where the lack of empathy, the lack of understanding comes from, compared to say something like a heart or something like that?
Yeah. And no, it's, first of all, people don't understand mental health, and they don't understand a child with depression, which is where it started. They think you can go, hey, be happy. Yeah, right. And it hit when she was world champion, making a lot of money at age 12.
Yeah. One has nothing to do with the other, right?
It has nothing to do with the other. And, so there isn't just be happy. You should be happy. Look how good things are. Right. It's just not like that. Yeah. If that was like that, Anthony Bourdain would still be with us, wouldn't he?
Great point. Yeah.
And then there's, especially with youth, the medications, and I'm not by any means an authority enough to bag on the medication process. But I can just share how I interpret it.
Right.
Okay. The revolving door of trying different meds and the side effects that come from that. And now I better understand in hindsight what my daughter was going through and how it agitated her and how her brain was getting distorted. And, you know, she talks about the medication, and here she is in water sports out in the sun, that when she would get in the sun and start to sweat, it felt like toxic poison. It felt like acid oozing from her skin. So there's this agitated person. And so people see bad behavior, right? An irritated kid. It looks ungrateful and ungracious. It looks like a little asshole, right? Right. And it's the medication and all the side effects that come with it. You just cannot prepare yourself for that. There's no way. So they don't see the whole picture. And, you know, and now having been through it, you know, you might see an incident with a 10-year-old, a 12-year-old or something with a mom in the grocery store. And I can go, yeah, I can see what's going on, you know, and I really empathize with that mom. And I go, yeah. And I know that other people are looking at him and judging him with what's going on. And then that mom's dying inside. You can just see it all. People just don't understand. It's just way complicated. It's really complicated. And there aren't enough of the right resources. But then again, we're going too much. The question, this came up because you're like, how did that go over when you were leaving for a month?
And that question still stands, because that adds a whole nother aspect of it that I hadn't even thought about.
Yeah. But we're lucky. We're lucky that things are where they are now.
Yeah. So that selling it had to be that much harder then. Getting back to
No, you got to know my wife.
Oh, okay.
She's like, go do it. I'll keep things going here. She's amazing.
Has the attention, the downloads? I mean, I don't know exactly how I haven't cracked the nut on making money from podcasts. Mm-hmm. But this has to be, I would imagine, with the popularity and the fact that people are looking forward to it. And anyone who listens knows that is not just the tour that you're doing. You guys are covering all of the grand tours, some of the spring classics. I think they're doing
the original intent was just the Tour de France. And people begged for more.
Yeah. And then you've got your own that you were doing with Brunel.
Mm-hmm. Yeah, that's for those that don't know, Johan Brunel was Lance's director.
Yeah.
During the U.S. Postal days, and then after Lance retired, he went on and directed a couple more teams, and had 13 Grand Tour wins as a director.
That's amazing.
He's a genius. Yeah. He's an absolute genius.
And it's fun to listen to those dynamics, even on the podcast. It's fun to listen to Lance be the bad guy, to George always be the nice guy, to Brunel always being this wise old wizard that sees stuff long before it ever happens.
He's a living dictionary, of current writers and past. I just am mind blown.
Yeah,
he gets frustrated with me because he'll reference names and of old writers and places. And I'm like, dude, I don't know. We didn't get these. You watched them on television as a kid.
Yeah.
Right. We didn't get this. We got 1 hour of the Tour de France on ABC. We don't know what this stuff is. Yeah. I have to remind him all the time.
Is this, I know you're doing some other stuff, but this has to be almost, you guys are doing the downloads just for the Tour de France is more downloads than 99% of all podcasts are getting, right? So, this is like a full-time job, I would imagine, just setting these up for all the different bike races.
Yeah, it is. We all do other things. But when it's, go time for a bike race coverage, we all just jump in. Who knows if it will become truly, truly full-time. Lance treats it like full-time for me. He knows, I leave the family like we talked about for a month, And it takes priority over anything else I do independently. And, but he has me on a salary to where, in the winter, I might not hear from him for 2 months.
That's a weird thing.
And I know it's so weird. I get this guilt of like, I should be doing something. He's like, no, we're good. Because when we're busy, we're really busy.
Did you have any like really oh shit moments where just either on the technical side where something they're like, JB, this is what we need you for, and things were kind of going to shit?
So there's another player on the team named, we refer to him as Bulch on the show. That's Dave Bulch. Dave has been working for Lance for a long time. He can do anything. Okay. So he's the perfect person to have on the team. And a little bit of Bulch's background. He started as a massage therapist, so became a soigneur. He's a great bike mechanic. He can cook. He can do carpentry. He can weld. Jesus. And so Lance met him many, many years ago, back when he had his ranch. And he's like, I need this guy. And I'm a good troubleshooter. I'm used to flying by the seat of my pants from radio. Of course, we had professional engineers and stuff back then when I did that. But I always anticipate something breaking, and I think about backups all the time.
Okay.
If this setup failed right now, I have another one I could plug in right now.
That's nice.
And Bulch is the same way. He just doesn't miss a detail. But stuff does happen all the time, and we just stay calm and just figure it out and rework it and go back at it. It doesn't happen very often, but when it does, Lance knows we're on it. He doesn't even need to ask. He knows we'll take care of it.
Right.
I used to, if something went wrong technically, I in the beginning, I'd be like, dude, I'm so sorry. I'll get this fixed tonight. And then finally he was like, dude, you don't have to say that. I know you'll fix it.
Yeah.
Okay. Stuff doesn't happen twice. He knows that Bulch and I will take care of things. Yeah. Which, we can talk about that more, what it's like working with him if you want, but I had to learn some things. Like, you don't need to tell him a bunch of information that he doesn't want to know. He doesn't want to know.
He just needs
don't fill my brain with stuff I don't need to know.
Yeah. Just the basics.
Which I like that.
Yeah. Now, so you guys, because these are covering each stage, some people may think that to just record a podcast and you just put it out, right? I mean, there's not much to it, but, not that it's the most technical thing in the world, but there is a process. There's editing and there's things that have to be done, and you're not doing just one. You're doing the move, and then you have your own show with Brunil
with Johan, and then we also put out La Movida in Spanish every day of the tour.
That is a shit ton of editing that has to be done. Is that on your shoulders from the time this is done? Hey, we got to get this edited and uploaded and going?
Yes. So when we stop recording, they all jump on their bikes.
Right. All right.
And I've got I've learned to get really efficient. And that's where Lance was great. I was like, if we do this, then I can speed it up this way. If we buy this, make an investment in this equipment, and he'll stop me, again, he'll stop me and he goes, I don't need to know. I trust you. If you say it's going to speed up, it's going to speed up. These are all rounding numbers. In the end of the day, let's get what you need.
Right.
So he's an incredible boss in that regard, because the tendency for people is to always justify their work.
Sure.
Right. Look what I did. I don't need to know. You're doing great.
Yeah, especially with money, because it's their money. So if you're spending it, there's this thing like, I would like to get this because it's going to help. Just get it.
Yeah. But, by getting a good set up and 3 cameras and having, Dave live switch everything, then I can pull it and trim it up, clean it up a little bit, do some audio tweaks, put the title cards on the front and the end. It's a race to get it out, because
I imagine,
recapping a bike race becomes old news really fast.
Yeah.
So we have the audio version out historically within 30 minutes.
That's really fast.
Of ending the show. Yeah. And then and then by within 2 hours after that, we'll have the whole video of the show on Facebook and YouTube.
That's insane.
It's nuts.
And that's to include, because I'll see you'll put out teasers for the episodes.
Yeah.
So that's up on social media as well. So that's a big task. So bravo, man.
It's not to go much down the art of podcasting, but I always, now I'm like the podcast guy. Thank you, Lance.
Yeah. Right.
But it's like, I tell people, because I do some podcast consulting, and it's like, is it speed or quality? Which is important, speed or quality? For, we strive for quality, but speed is more important for us. People use YouTube as a search engine, and you want to see stage 17 Tour de France recap. Boom. If we get it up quickly, it's, by the time they're trying to catch up in the evening, it's going to be there. We're going to show up first page. And not to mention the time difference. I mean, we're also trying to get it so the Europeans can see it in the evening before they go to bed.
Yeah. There's something about mess ups, even if it's not perfect, that I found. Yeah. So I have this long, standing thing where I just mess people's names up. And I used to try and correct it. And then I found out it was like this thing that people actually enjoyed. So I just lean into it now. I mean, I don't mess it up on purpose, but I think there's a little bit of leeway on a podcast. Probably it's got to be a bit different than coming from the radio world, where things are a little more polished,
a little slick. Yeah. No, I love that about it. I do like. In fact, we have a member portal where they get to watch the show being recorded live. They get to tune in when we're going over pre-show notes, and there's some funny moments, and they get to see it recorded. Which is a fun thing. They get to see all the warts and everything.
Yeah, it's cool.
Yeah, it's fun for people.
Well, I'll tell you what, JB, we've been on for an hour, man, and I don't want to keep hold you here all night long. I'm sure you got a bunch of stuff going on here, but when is the next show coming out? When is it? I mean, is it going to be day one? You guys did just put out a pre-show, didn't you?
We just did a pre-show, including our predictions.
Okay.
And I won't be that jerk that says you have to go listen to it to hear who.
Right.
Who it is. You got to read the book.
Yeah, right.
It was pretty interesting, and sometimes they ask my predictions, sometimes they don't. I don't care if they do or don't. But in my mind, if they asked, I was going to pick Primož Roglič.
That's my pick.
Johan went first and picked Primož Roglič.
Son of a bitch.
Lance picked Primož Roglič.
It's garbage.
And George picked Primož Roglič.
I haven't seen, and maybe it's just I haven't been paying enough of attention. I mean, I get that these guys peak for the tour, but I just haven't seen them all that much.
That's why I wanted to pick him. And I said on the show prior, just so to give some of your listeners a little context who maybe aren't cycling nuts like you and I, Primož Roglič was a competitive ski jumper.
Yeah.
And he had a nasty accident.
Horrible.
If you want to find it on YouTube, took him out of that sport. Way latecomer to cycling, way latecomer. And just skyrocketed to being an incredible rider. He's Slovenian, by the way, and I said on the show prior, I go, Primož Roglič is just a stone cold killer. Like he's just so. And again, for those who don't know, he lost the tour last year on the last day, second to last day, the time trial,
right,
to another Slovenian. Ouch, right, and he was fizzling towards the end of the tour. He's going to fix that.
I hope so.
That's why he didn't last year. He was in the Dauphiné, which is the lead up. He's adjusting to make sure he's peaking as the tour goes and not fizzling. And he doesn't say much. I think he's got that mindset. He's just an animal. And it's going to be great to watch because there's so much talent this year.
I'm excited about it. I know I think it was the performance director had mentioned that he was also dealing with a back injury last year, which kept them from being on the time trial bike. So whether that's just lip service, I don't know. What's your thoughts on Sepp? Do you think this guy can be a GC contender? I mean, he's American.
Sepp Kuss. Yeah.
I mean, his climbing is just unreal. What's your thoughts?
Yeah, for those who don't know, he's from Durango, Colorado. He has been very present in races we've seen. Again, for the people who don't know racing, he's there in a domestique role. He's incredible in that role. That means you're a worker for your team leader. In particular, on the high mountain stages, the ones that finish at the top, he's there and he's just a machine. He's an absolute machine. He could, and this is discussions we have had. This is not necessarily just, again, not everybody wants JB's opinion. This is kind of a collectively, we've discussed that to where, he's not there now. He's not ready yet.
Yeah.
He could be. He needs, more maturity in his riding and legs and be an all-rounder. But wow, when he's working, he just, his form, his facial expressions, he doesn't move. He's unbelievable to watch. He makes it look easy. Kind of like, is everybody still behind me?
I know. He's so stoic when he's riding it. And he's ridden Roglic off his back wheel before and not even realizing, he turns around and looks and, but
he could be, we could see him getting some victories here and there. And, maybe it's a 1 week tour first is where he really shines. But we need an American hero. That's what brings people in. It's true with every sport, right?
Yeah. I mean, you took Le Mans and, the guy was doing a Taco Bell commercial. And that's really like mainstream American. And he brought, it was the first American. And then Lance took it to a whole nother level. I think we're ready. I think we're ready for another American to come in here, and I know bike companies are, because it sure as hell would sell a bunch of bikes. So,
I know, and the cost of bikes now. When's the last time you bought a bike?
A new one? Oh, it's been a long time. I've been an eBay guy for quite a while.
They cost as much as motorcycles now, and it's pretty insane. I'm actually at a house right now. My friend Sam, he's a consultant for motorcycle, bicycle, and boat industries.
Okay.
Outside of Denver, and he's been barking about this for some time, that they got to treat bicycles like motorcycles, to where you can walk in the door and finance this thing for $200 a month, just like you can walk out with a Harley doing that. You can trade in your old bike. At these prices, treat it that way.
Yeah, at these prices, you have to. I mean, you would do so much more business, I think.
Yeah, and for those who don't know, you can easily spend $12,000, if not more, on a good road bike or mountain bike, and they've got to treat it that way. And then how the mindset of people are. What's my payment? Yeah. And it's like, okay, I've had this bike 3 years. I'm ready for a new one, and I can trade in, and I can move in, and keep that payment going and keep staying in a newer bike.
It's like a cell phone,
like we do with cars.
Yeah, it's like a cell phone or a car.
Yeah, just like your cell phone, right?
Yeah. Well, listen, JB, I appreciate just coming on here, talking cycling, talking about the podcast, and then especially just opening up on stuff on the personal side. I think, I know this was a lot more of a conversation than I had expected, and it's something I'm glad you did. So thank you very much for that.
Very cool. And I appreciate you reaching out, and it did help me a lot with the long road trip up from Austin here. And I got to listen to I enjoyed your Sean Kelly interview. No one gets to talk to that guy, or since he was racing.
Well,
and I enjoyed the Le Mans interview and a couple others that you did. It's really good stuff. And say hi to our friends at Athletic Brewing.
I will. I was just telling you, I'm sipping on their first ride coffee porter, which means I might be up for a bit tonight. But I thought I was this cutting edge thing where I called up actually the owner. And I said, hey, I loved your product. It's been part of my journey of removing alcohol from my life. I'd love
Congratulations.
Oh, thank you. I said, I want to talk about it on the podcast. And they were great, right? They send me some beer, and I'm talking about it. And then I'm watching the move. and son of a bitch, you guys had on Athletic Brewing. I'm like,
yeah. And another thing about me is I'm a beer snob. I love beer. And then when Lance showed up with a bunch of the Athletic Brewing, let me taste that. I'll just see. And I was pleasantly surprised. Like, this is a good craft beer taste.
Have you tried their hazy IPA, their Free Wave yet?
Yeah, which is that's actually, it's good. And that's my go-to right now is hazy IPAs. They've got something figured out.
Yeah. I don't know. I don't know what kind of alchemists they are, but they've done something right. And
yeah, for sure.
Yeah. Cool, man. Well, listen, if you feel free anytime, this would be a venue for you. You want to jump on, talk cycling, talk about whatever. Love to have you back sometime. And
yeah, it's been a pleasure. Keep up the good work. It's not as easy as everyone thinks, is it?
It's a fact. That's a fact. Awesome.
You just got to keep. It's your new habit, right?
That's
keep
what
the
I'm
grind
doing.
going. Everybody quits. They all, it's like when Lance says, when it's raining at the start line, half the people quit.
I think
podcasts, 90% of them, if not more, quit after 2 months of trying it. Just keep grinding.
They say 15 episodes. If you can get past 15, that's the number. And then I don't think it gets any easier. But the thought of quitting, you're like, man, I've been doing it too long now.
Yeah,
but
yeah, keep it up. Keep it up. It's cool, a good show.
Thanks, man. Appreciate it, JB. Be good.
Thank you.
And I'll be listening to you here soon.
All right. We start on Saturday. Well, I don't know when this is going out, but we start.
It's going out quick now.
Date?
It's not going out in 30 minutes. I'll tell you that much. It's gonna be a little bit longer than that.
All right.
All right. Take care.
Take care.
That's a wrap. Please do me a favor. Log on to wherever you get a podcast from. If you're on Apple, please leave some stars. 5 would be great. Leave a rating. If you want to leave something, tell me I'm doing good, tell me I'm doing bad, whatever that may be, I would appreciate it very much. Please check out the Move podcast with JB and Lance Armstrong, and I will catch you all next week.